Hello, what is going on? This is Observing Reality here, and this is my first video, but this is something that I genuinely have wanted to talk about for quite a while. But yeah, so recently we've seen the situation with Dwayne Wade and his quote unquote daughter Zaya, formerly male, and or formerly male in quotes unquotes. Um, So Zaya, 12 years of age, made the claim, has known their gender identity since the age of 3, that they were the wrong gender. I'm gonna put it out there, like just logically, we as people, we don't tend to fundamentally know anything about anything until we're told these things. So you knowing what a gender is by the age of 3 is excessively unlikely. It's excessively unlikely, and it's something that normally doesn't start to take place until you're like 9, 10, 11. You really start identifying males and females more profusely. Now we have an idea of males and females, but we don't have an idea of roles, and we don't have an idea of social stigma. Now, the term gender is now a social identity transgression. That's essentially what it is. It's a form of how you deem yourself to be socially on a social scale. But what I've noticed is that there are now a lot of people within the transgender community who are saying that I am a female or I am a male from the opposing. They've gone from the opposing side over to the other, and they're making this claim. And no offense to anybody who is transgender, if you are transgender, cool for you. That's cool beanos. Muy bueno, good for you. But a lot of people who tend to be transgender have gone through counseling and therapy and have gotten a diagnosis of something that we refer to as gender dysphoria, which is essentially a form of depression within your gender. A lot of people they want to cut off their genitalia. They want to mutilate themselves. But now we're seeing it become more of an actual trend to be in focus. And I know that there are people within the transgender community who will argue against that. But even you need to admit to some extent the struggles that you've gone through, not necessarily these people are going through. The struggle of not being able to be yourself. Now, a lot of people in life, they do tend to struggle with who they are, what they are, and how they look. And to some extent, we are seeing a trend focus on this transgender issue. And it is quite a sad thing, if we're being completely honest. It's almost abysmal to some extent that you see people saying, "Oh, you can be whatever you want to be." Yes, if that is correct. Now, this is where I stand on things. If it's correct, if you have gender dysphoria and you're deemed to be transgender, cool. Well, if you're deemed to be in the wrong gender dysphoria is essentially a form of depression relating to one's gender and how they feel on the body to the inside, and the best form of treatment is to be able to change the body on the outside to suit what's felt on the inside. So if you want to change your gender on a social scale, you can do that, but go through the proper ramifications. Don't just announce to the world that you're transgender when you don't have that diagnosis. And that's the situation here with Dwayne Wade and his daughter, because his daughter hasn't got a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, because he's only said that his daughter um were supporting her and she came home and said I am transgender, rather than coming home and saying I feel that there's something wrong, and then you going to the correct outlets, you just said okay, you're transgender. You don't have that right. You do not have the right to just deem a 12-year-old child to be transgender. That's very confusing. And normally, with situations like this, it does lead to suicide more often than not. More cases of people who are told they're transgender after saying they feel they could be transgender end in suicide than people who actually go in for counseling, for hormone replacement therapy. And that's the last thing I want to see with this kid. I don't want to see this kid be another casualty of public reform as an experiment. I want to see this kid go through the right things, the right circumstance. I don't want to see another person dead because of a trend. And that's being perfectly honest. And whilst a lot of people will say, "Oh, you're being so offensive," not really. I'm just labeling things as to how they are, not what I deem them to be considered transgender. You can go ahead and say you're anything you want. You can say all of these things. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I can say I'm a billionaire. Fact is, I'm not. I'm a struggling guy who doesn't have much money, who works his ass off to try and become something, and I have a bit of here and there, and I'm able to get by and have a nice life. That's all I am. I'm not a billionaire, but I can turn around and tell you I am. Does that automatically make me one? No. So if you turn around to me and say, "Hey, I am a woman trapped in a man's body," does that mean that you are? Absolutely not. You need to go through the correct protocol for that to be fair to the other people who have to. And that's just my thoughts. If you're new, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, dislike button, whatever you want. And down below, tell me what you think. How do you feel about this situation? Peace.